Hey everyone, I'm Elle Russ, your host for the Women's Empowerment Project, Rise Up and Kick Ass. Today we have Cassie Parks. She's the author of several books, but incredible programs, one of which has really affected my life, Manifest 10,000. We're going to talk about money today with Cassie. She really knows how to bring it in, how to keep it, what to do with it, has had major success at a very young age with lots of different things that most people would want. And so we're going to chat with her about all things money and women. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the summit, the project.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Of course, I love hanging out with you any chance I get.
To the audience, Cassie recently had come into Los Angeles. We took a nice Malibu beach walk and lunch. It was so delightful. And if people are interested, you can always go to the Primal Blueprint podcast and listen to episode 128 or 175. Both of those are Cassie and I also talking about a bunch of different other things if you want to hear more. You've accomplished a lot, and I consider you an empowered woman, not just with money, but with things. For example, let's just start off with where you were, how old you were before you jumped into an area of actually becoming like a property owner at a young age.
How old was I? It's a good question. I think I was 27. Because, well, I originally bought my first house probably when I was around 25, 26. And
that's really young. You're like, whatever. And I'm like, that's young.
It is. Yes, it is. It is young, and I will accept that and celebrate that. It is young. And, things, I had this mindset that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to have investment properties. I hadn't fine-tuned it at this point, but, my first investment property came just about 18 months after I bought that property because all my roommates moved out. I'm like, I don't need this big house to myself. So I bought a house down the street that was smaller and then just started renting the other one out.
At what point did you, because you were in a different arena, you weren't doing what you're doing now. What were those thoughts when you were in the working world that were like, something needs to change?
So my thoughts started, when I was 19 years old. I had watched my dad work and he ended up with a lot of money, but he really felt like it was luck. Like everything had worked out. And he worked really hard. He worked a lot of hours. And I was always like, how am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to luck my way into this, right? Like, how can I recreate that? And so when I was 19, I was introduced. I feel very lucky. At 19, I walked, some guy recruited me to this financial services company. And I sat there and I learned for the first time what financial independence means, meaning that you have enough passive income to live off of without working. And that was the first moment I was like, that's what I want. It took me a while to get back there, but that was the first moment. And so then when I was in my job, I'm like, I want out. I want to build my business. I want to do this. And I worked for a long time to try and build my coaching practice on the side, which wasn't as effective because of my mindset, because I had a lot of things going on there. But I just started working my money mindset because I was like, I want the choice whether I go to work or not.
What inspired you to understand that it was actually your own mindset, not busting your ass 70 hours a week, that was going to bring you that kind of financial and also time freedom?
I wish that I could pinpoint
probably a million things.
Right. I wish it was like one moment and it was like, this is the moment. I think it was continually seeing and being more open and seeing. So there's a couple of things that I went to. I went to a summit or workshop, whatever you want to call it, that was all about passive income. And so seeing, they probably presented 45 in 3 days passive income opportunities.
Wow.
And yes. So for me, that was like, oh, there's so many options, right? Anything from just like a vending machine, a couple $100 to laundromat, to all this real estate, to all these other things, right? So I think that was really like my mind started opening. And then what I realized is I had to change. I had my dad worked really hard. And what I learned as an adult is he actually really enjoyed that. It wasn't, for me, it looked very painful because I didn't want to work all the time. But for him, as I realized as I've gotten older and I look at the true story, like that wasn't hard for him. It was what he loved. But I had to look at my beliefs that I thought I had to work that hard. And I really had to start shifting them and looking for stories of people that didn't work as hard and had money. And then it just became evident that, okay, this is all my mind. I get to choose, and I have to choose the thoughts that are going to support what I want.
I love that. I love the idea of going somewhere and just how about just the idea of passive income? Just those two terms.
Yes.
I mean, so that's so many things, like you said, they could be on small levels like that. I know a friend who's very successful who once it just manages all of the ATMs and bars in Chicago. All the different bars people need to go. He got in on it when people are like, we need money, we got to buy, we pay cash, whatever. And that's a passive situation at one point. Now, at first it isn't. He was the guy going and figuring it out, but then it grew. And then it becomes a passive and managing from the top. My boss, Mark Sisson, or my publisher and creator of the podcast, I mean, talk about a master of passive income when you create a food company and supplement company and all these other things or books, things that are just coming in with you not putting in crazy effort because it's already established. And here's the other thing I love too. So maybe we could just jump to this, because I also love too that some of the things you think you want when you get money, you're in them, and then you're like, actually, I don't.
Yeah.
And I know you had that, like with the Four Seasons, not to rip on the Four Seasons is amazing, but like there were some things about it just practically that you're like, even though it's the Four Seasons, like there's things about it that, yes, I manifested, I'm here and I love it, but I'm also not going to be here forever because it's not perfect. That's okay too. I've manifested things I thought I want and I wanted a different version, or I got them. And then I was like, well, I'm glad I got it, but actually I want something different.
Yes.
So how about that? Going with the flow. And if you could talk about the Four Seasons experience for a second, because this is
absolutely
awesome.
It is. Yeah. Awesome. And I loved my time there. I can't emphasize that enough. But really and part of why I wanted to live there is I thought I could never live there. I don't remember if we talked about this on the other podcast, but it was when they were building it is when I was first thinking of moving downtown. And a friend said to me jokingly, because she knew how much they were, I had no idea. And she said, I was 28. I had no clue about that. And she said, we'll check out the Four Seasons. And I went and I looked, and like everything was sold. It was like, I don't know, I think the cheapest thing was $1 million, or I don't know. But I was like, oh, in that moment, in just that moment of time, I was like, that's not for me. Right. But I still looked from my other balcony, my building that was around the corner. And I was like, but I want that. And so eventually I opened my mind and said, okay, I can have that. And so part of it is I think what happens a lot of times with money is that we want the choice, and what a lot of things represent is the choice. And so I'm always about going to get it because I think it grows. And I grew into somebody that I couldn't have done otherwise had I not lived at the Four Seasons. But yeah, when I got to about a year in, I was like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be forever. There's other things I want, and I love it. There are things I miss, the pool and the gym mostly.
Both
but,
nice.
yeah. And my concierge, like being able to walk down and do certain things. But, it's okay to want something and to manifest it and to go get it and then to change your mind.
Right.
Because it's all part of creating this better version of you and what you believe is possible in the world.
I love it. Let's talk about women's empowerment and money, because, you and I are both talking a little bit before. We grew up with mothers that were like, you have your own money, you have your, you know what I mean? So back in the day, the empowered women, before they even had rights, were the ones that were like, you go to get groceries and you stash $20 away to keep for yourself. Because then if you were left in the dust, you were left in the dust. Like you couldn't probably even get a job. But then it filtered down, and now everyone's a little bit more transparent, honest, or we want that. Talk to us about some of your experiences, what you've noticed about women and money, either, and the disempowerment of it. Let's talk about the other side before we get into how to empower yourself.
Okay. I think there's a lot of, some of it is, we were lucky that had moms that did that. We were talking before, I said, I didn't realize, like, my mom has friends that have zero just money with their name on it, and she'll tell them, like, they've been married for 40 years. She's like, go get your own account, because we actually have a blog post that says this, like 5 things, financially savvy women should have. And one of them is your own bank account, because money gives us choices. And I think when we have the opportunity to make better choices, we make better choices. Right. But when we're stuck, we make choices from a different place. And so sometimes that happens to us because, we didn't create our own plans, our own bank account. Some of the things I've seen that have disempowered people with money is health, and health, it's getting divorced, it's making that
You
choice.
mean not being able to afford health things, or what do you mean in terms of health? Ruining your health because you're stressing about money.
That too. Specifically, I have a client who really she had some major health challenges. And so financially that changed who she was for a point in time. She's worked with me for a couple of years, so it's no longer who she is, but
oh yeah, I mean, I went broke with hypothyroidism. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The things that you don't see coming and the things that create stories. And so, getting divorced, getting married, and deciding to make that really cool choice as a woman to stay home. But then sometimes that shifts our money story, right? It shifts like what we feel like we have power over. So those are some of the things I think. And then if being a single mom can be kind of disempowering, I think the biggest thing that disempowers us is the stories we tell behind it.
Yeah. And I think too, there's scenarios where, especially when people get married young and they do choose to stay at home, which again, like love, that's amazing. I mean, that really is, in fact, that's ideal for children in so many, of course, but at the same time, down the road, if something changes in that relationship, that person it can become codependent or won't actually leave a situation that they know is miserable. And it's because of the money, because they don't have their own, or they're worried because without this person, and that can keep you attached to stuff, right? Not just
Absolutely.
people, and also this goes for same-sex relationships as well.
Right.
Just because, look, there's physical and verbal abuse in same-sex relationships. There's all sorts of money. It's all across the board. This applies.
Absolutely. And I think it even happens in relationships that aren't maybe any sort of abusive, right? They just have run their course and they're not happy anymore. Or, but there's this thing about, I can't leave because I made this choice. Either I've been out of the workforce for too long. One of my favorite shows, Younger, is about that, right? Yeah, I love that show. And, she can't, the whole premise is that she, stayed home with her kid, gave up her job. So she's 15 years behind in the job market and can't get back into that. And so those are some of the situations that are real that women come up against. That put us in a disempowered financial situation.
The other thing too, we mentioned earlier, is that even if you're listening and watching, if you weren't raised by someone or a mother who empowered you, then you go to other women and you seek out those mentors so that you can get mothered by them. And it could even be a friend your same age, right? But I would suggest go and seek out, because we need to be encouraged and empowered by other women. And I know Cassie and I, that's certainly a mission of ours and people in general. So if you don't have that and didn't have that, and you have some contentious thing with your mother, which, a lot of women do, then you need to go to some strong women to kind of help bring you up and build your inner confidence, because that also has to do with money. If you're not confident, and it's not about skills, if you're not confident that you actually can achieve a certain level of wealth or success in any situation, let's get into before we get into manifesting money, which is the best part of the conversation. Before we get into that, listen, you've written a lot of books, like talk about being empowered. You also just came out, took a screenwriting class. You're working on other creative projects. You're constantly developing things. You've got an amazing podcast, Manifest It Now, with Ginny Gain. Ginny Gain is also another guest on this empowerment project. Two empowered women together doing separately two empowered things. But for you, let's talk about your books. I mean, because just being a prolific writer anyway, and getting those things done, getting it done, you have a lot to kind of say for yourself in terms of that, a lot of accomplishments. So I'd love you to talk about being a writer and at least some of those accomplishments in your books and things like that.
Absolutely. So I currently have on Amazon and 2 are in bookstores. I have 6 nonfiction books, and I just last week my second fiction novella came out, so now I have 2 fiction books. I know.
Woohoo! And tell us the name, of course.
So Own It and Choose Me, which are very much about being empowered women. The characters are women who learn to be empowered in their own right and are mentored, as you said, by other women who have come before. So I love that we can tie that in, because that's really what the book is. I mean, it's about owning what we want. It's about choosing us, and it's about how do we get there as women, and how do we pull and be mentored by women who've come before us, and what lessons do they have. So that's super exciting. I started writing, and it just became one of those things that for me was like a decision. Like once I make the decision, it's done. Right. And once I had written fiction, I was like, oh, which I guess there are actually 7 maybe, nonfiction, nope, 6 nonfiction. Then moving to fiction, it was just, I got to this place where I had empowered myself enough along the journey that I could see other opportunities. So I think when I was younger, some pipe dream when I was probably in elementary school, I wanted to be a fiction author. You know, everybody has to write fiction when you're in elementary school.
Yeah.
And I wanted that, but I had forgotten that because, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's society or you get busy, like you forget that what you're capable of or what you want to do. And after accomplishing and writing these other books, it just like hit me like, I want to see if I can write fiction. I want to see if I can do it. And that like the ability to be able to sit down and write fiction and believe from the beginning that when I started the process, I could finish the process, really comes from this journey of empowerment, which has a lot to do with money, but also just has to do with choosing. And like you said, following in the footsteps of other empowered women, like noticing the strengths that I love in women that I saw as empowered or that had something that I wanted. You know, you mentioned like, you know, going and finding a mentor. So often people get stuck and they go to the same people for advice. They go to the people that are around them in the same place. Go seek the stuff, the mentorship, the advice from women who have what you want, whether it's the life, it's the money, it's whatever. Seek out not just the ones that are around you, but the ones that really have something, whether it's a spark, it's a belief in themselves, it's their confidence, it's the business, it's a career. Go seek out, you know, to be in touch and get empowered from them and mentored and all that good stuff.
What are and on that note, by the way, do I look fluorescent? Because I feel like
no, you look gorgeous.
Well, no, I mean, just I literally was like, looking in here, and I was like, do I look fluorescent? I'm wondering if the lighting. Anyway, hopefully, Karen.
I know when it changes, right?
I feel like it's changing every minute. What do I look like? I have like neon hair, and then I'm like, wait, and I know it's all this stuff going on. Anyway, sorry for that distraction. But hey, life is real.
It is real, right?
We're filming, you know, and hey, no, but so I want to talk about those qualities. So what is it that you see out in mentors, you know, or other women that you're like, well, I really admire that. Like as you were going through your train or seeing it in your mother, one of the things I loved about my own mother is that she never had contentious BS relationships with any other women, never had any bickery, fighty drama ever. And she mentored and brought up other women, encouraged them, helped them get jobs promoted. And I am also like that. I think I inherited, I'm a natural helper that way, but I think because of her, and I really admired that. I love it when I see, I love that I saw my mother, who was a single mother and had to get to where she was with hard ass work, to rise to the top, to help and see in other women to help them rise to the top. So that's one of the things I love, but that's just double empowerment. What are some of the actual characteristics you've seen in women that you've admired, who are empowered, that you're like,
I'm trying to think, because definitely I know I have, you know, relationships. Like I look at women who have the type of relationships I want, right? That are empowered, that are like, that you speak genuine and nicely and things like that. Women who have like climbed the ranks, women who have like stayed home and maintained their power, because I think that that's a huge thing. And my mom specifically, it's her ability to go after things. You know, she made a choice to stay at home because financially my dad made more, and our family couldn't support, like we just, 2 jobs was too much. Her job was growing too much, his job was growing too much. It just didn't work anymore. And so she's the one who stayed home, but she always found a way to contribute. That's what I love about her, is that she went, okay, I'm not going out there, but what else can I do? And so, my dad went out and made money, and I always say she made more of it. She turned that money into more. She did investments, and she worked hard. She put the hours in there, when she couldn't afford to pay people to paint and clean and do all this stuff. She didn't do it anymore, because she's at a different place. But in the beginning, she did all the work. She scrubbed the baseboards, and she scrubbed the floor and cleaned the carpets and did all of that. Just being willing to create what you want and not say that it's not possible. One of the things I love about one of the stories my mom told me recently is they live in this amazing house on 35 acres in this really cool, it's about an hour north of Denver. And there's a ranch that we used to go to for my dad's company picnic when I was 10, 12, whatever. And she said, yeah, one time we left there, and it's about 15 minutes from where they live. And we drove through this neighborhood. It was before it was gated. And she said, I thought to myself, I don't know how, but I'm going to live here one day. And so women that see things as possible instead of telling you what's not possible or how hard the journey is going to be, but the women that are willing to say, like, yeah, that's possible, go get it. Maybe it's going to be hard, but I'll have your back.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up a way to contribute from home, because you don't have to be type A or be, kind of like, hey, we're going to go out there and you don't have to be us or our personality to be empowered, right? At all. You don't have to even be a talkative. You can be an introvert. One of the ways you can empower other women as a woman at home is other children at your house and noticing things that they say. So if you start to notice a young girl being self-deprecating about herself or things like that, there's always a way to encourage and foster a lot of that they might not be getting at home. And if you notice it, you offer it. They will grow up and be like, she was like a second mom to me. Do you know what I mean?
I do know.
So, and it almost gives me goosebumps, because I know kids who grew up who only had that other person that was the figure, because the one over here wasn't. So if you're an empowered woman and, and you're at home, that's another way you can do it, is through, and maybe extending more sleepovers with that friend or including them on some things, because, they might need some extra mothering, so that's a great way to empower children who are going to be raised. Yeah. Let's talk about, how do we start being empowered about money as women? Like, where do you even start?
So I always start with, what's your current money story? Because I think it brings awareness to what's been going on and what's playing out. So I talk about 4 of them, which is just enough. This is pretty common with single moms. It's the characteristic is, that if the furnace breaks, you're magically going to get $1,000, but you also know if you get $300 extra, the brakes are going to go out, right? Because everything just stays even. You can maintain that. Survival mode, survival story, which is really where you create, whether or not you're still in survival. At one point you probably were, but you still create that story. So you'll go blow money so that you have to survive 2 weeks later, or you'll create a problem. And this happens with time and money and all of that. I see that play out in that.
Can you give a couple examples of that? I know exactly. Like real life world, how someone might, even if it's a fake one. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So one of my clients that comes right to mind, she has a business. And so for her, she had in her mind, like, okay, if I have employees, I'm going to make more money because I'm going to be charging my clients this, only going to be paying them this. Well, what she was actually doing is creating more work and less money for herself to stay in survival. When we actually got out of it, it was costing her a lot of money to have employees and a lot of time. So she was working harder and making less, but she was so accustomed to having that story that even when she lived in a house, her husband made 6 figures, everything was amazing, but she kept creating that story of when she was a single mom and being raised by a single mom when there wasn't enough, just because it was her story, not because it was her current reality. Yeah.
My friend's father is probably worth over $40 million. He's not enjoyed a penny of it. He's in his 80s. He will eat 3-day-old leftovers, lives in a house that's decrepit and like a hoarder, not hoarder, but just like probably hasn't had a new, I mean, the only thing he'll spend on it is like a nice car and he'll go out to dinners, but never took a vacation, never, because he grew up in poverty in Iran. He emigrated here. They were so poor that I think a sister died because he could barely afford to get to the hospital. Long story short, oh my God. So he was like, oh no, I'm not going to be poor, right? I'm going to make money. And boy, did he. But
Right.
I'm telling you, everyone, you would not trade this guy's past 50, 60 years for the money. You wouldn't. If it meant you had to go live his life with that money, you wouldn't do it, because
Yeah.
your life is already better than that life. So, it's a story though. And it was too bad because we all saw it, even as kids were like, oh man, he could totally be like, he's not enjoying for what? Then what was it all for?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up, because the amount of money doesn't matter. I mean, this is the thing I drill into my clients. It doesn't matter how much you have. These stories play out all the time. That reminded, I had someone else that was saying, oh yeah, a friend of mine was a coach and she had a client was playing out at $300,000. It plays out at $3 million. Like I've seen it over and over, 30,000, 300,000, 3 million. The same story can play out because it's not about the money. It's about what's going on in your head.
Yeah, I think so my father was a stockbroker for many years, which is a little like gambling. But but what I used to always hear in the background, and I never really understood it at first, because so when people say like 100 G's, they mean 100,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like my dad would come home or something, and my mom would be like, "Hey, how was your day?" And he would say something like, "Oh, pretty good, 50 G's, da da da," and then next day, "Oh, not bad, 20 G," like because it's always like these big chunks that are like.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that kind of like weird loss gain weird thing in my head always about it.
Yeah.
And then he lost all of it.
Mm.
So, it was like a story that was weird. Yet then my mother became like the money maven from, just like extraordinarily one of the most successful women,
Yeah.
which was great to see. So in a way, it was a good thing because, I got to see a woman get empowered and rise up and just handle it. But then I also had this other thing about like, whoa, and that kind of, I think gambling and anything around, like, and not that I wouldn't go to Vegas and have fun, and I don't feel like I would gamble, but like those kind of things are always like, nah, yeah, those are just like a little bit too high stakes. And it's the same thing as like survival mode or thrill of. It's often why a lot of people, and like we see this played out in so many areas of politics and even celebrity, you can rise to a huge level, have everything, and you're still doing stuff to risk it, this adrenaline rush, or whether it's teetering on the edge of getting caught, or it doesn't matter what the thing is, but it's that like edge, and it doesn't matter if it's survival or right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I want to talk about some more of those money stories because those are going to resonate with people. I heard one, someone, my friend's mom was like walking by a harbor, and there's like, $1 million yachts, and, she said something like, ugh, must be nice.
Yeah. Right.
And my thought was, well, you'll definitely never have a yacht. That's that attitude will, that's
Right.
that's out for you. Yeah.
Yeah. It closes the door.
Let's talk about those comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to give, and then just to kind of close the loop, and there's two more money stories that I talk about: Money Chaser and the Money Hot Mess. And so you can find out more. Money Chaser is that person who's like, it's never enough. You always are like the next MLM or the next business. You're just always like, I gotta have it. I gotta have it. And the Money Hot Mess is really somebody who is, they probably have always, money has always flowed in easily, but at some point it sort of stopped or became imbalanced. And so it's just all over the place. It's not that there's enough. It's just that they're not paying attention. And so that creates
Let's review those four again. I love it. Go through quickly. Yeah.
Just Enough, Survival, Money Chaser, and then the Money Hot Mess.
Let's talk about some of the stuff around money chasers, because people might be listening to that and go, I'd like to, if of the four, I want to be that one. So then what are the pitfalls? So what are the pitfalls? I mean, I guess part of it might be that story I just told about my friend's father, but what are some of the other maybe not so great things about that?
Yeah. So I would say like all of these they're generally not great, but they're where people start. They're sort of the default, right? Of if you don't choose your money story, these are sort of ones that you pick up along the way. And so the money chaser, like that's the negative side, is that you're always it's never enough, and it's never going to be enough, because you're always looking for that next thing. How can I make more? How can I get this? And you're willing to, do that thing where like, oh, I'll put down $1,000 if I think there's a possibility I'm going to make 10, right? And you're just, because it's never enough, and you're always chasing it, right? And it was interesting. I read an article one time from a hedge fund guy, and his bonuses were like in the millions and millions of dollars, and he was like, but it wasn't enough. It became like, he's like, I just couldn't get enough. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. And I mean, if he'd like to PayPal me some of it,
right.
Like, we know what to do with it. We will
Yeah.
totally treat that really well.
Yeah.
So when we identify our money story, or a couple of different ones, what I really love about Manifest 10,000, and I want to get into that, that whole program, because first of all, I've done it, and it was like, out of the 60 or 90 days, was it 90 days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Out of the 90 days, the first 60 days was like a super random extra, like 1,900, 2,000, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my friend actually is in an industry where people get paid very late or not at all for years. Sometimes literally it's like, oh my God, it's been 2 years and they owe me $15,000. I mean, this is like, it's in the Hollywood industry that can be like that.
Yeah.
Music, this, film. So anyway, she had not been paid literally $10,000 for like a couple of years. And she bugged them over the years a million times. And, you just, and then there's the thing, like, you don't want to sue them, because then there's all the industry. So you just kind of like, it's, it can be tough when you're on the other end. And so then I said, and she did your course, and she forgot about that check already. She forgot about those people, because there's too many of those already. And it had been years. And then after she did Manifest 10,000, she literally got that check from that company. Amazing. In mail, like within, I don't know, it was like 30 days. And I even had to remind her like or it was after the course, because it was a little bit after. And then I had to remind her, I'm like, that's like almost exactly, like you just did and she was like, oh my God, that's so funny. So what I love about this is that if people have no idea where to start, and they are just like, what are you talking about, manifesting money? Can't work anymore. I have 5 jobs. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this. We're talking about this. So tell us about Manifest 10K. There's so many great things in this, because I've taken it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so what it does is it naturally helps you create a new money story. So if you come in with one of those old money stories that you didn't choose, as you go along the way, everybody creates their own, which is what I love, is it ends up being your own money story at the end. It's not just, it doesn't fit in a box anymore. It's true to you. And the process really starts with that intention of, what are you going to do with $10,000? Getting clear on that, and walks you through an exercise. There's ones for the first 30 days or every day, but walks you step by step, how to just shift a little bit every day, how to put your focus a little bit more on what's possible with money. What do you want with money? How do you want your story to play out? Just changing step by step in your mind, so that money starts coming in, and it happens over and over again, right? People, like, money is always coming in when somebody's committed in doing the course. Like, it's always finding their way in. One of my favorites is, like, I have a client, and she literally forgot she had opened these accounts I think it was like 5 years ago. And the bank started calling during her Manifest 10K, and they're like, yeah, you have money in this account. Like, we need to know what she's like, what? And she thought it was a scam. It took her a long time to start calling back, because she was like, I don't remember.
That sounds like a scam.
Right? She's like, I don't remember opening these accounts. And they're like, no, you put in, I don't know, it was a couple $100 or whatever it was. And there was 2 of them. And it was worth, the total of the 2 was $5,000. She's like, yeah, which she had no recollection, no remembering. And so stuff like that happens. People randomly get offers, bringing in more money. I've had people get jobs with $20,000, pay increases, just all kinds of things. Because when you start writing a new money story and you start living that, money just finds its way into your life.
One of the things I like is, and I was kind of reminded about it the other day, the old trick of keeping $100 bill or a couple $100 bills in your wallet. And I was reminded, and I was like, oh yeah, because, you know, we're so in the world of virtual payment.
Yep.
And I was like, remember that one recently because I was driving my publisher, Mark, to the airport the other day. And he pulls on he pulls on his wallet, and he just had like, you know, he's a wealthy guy, but he, of course, and he had a couple hundred, and they were just crisp $100 bills. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to go get some of those and put them in my wallet. Because because by the way, also too, when you are at that level, you really do have like hundreds of dollars a lot. Now, it's not that you have to keep 700 in there if that's like, you know, I mean, of course, but even just $100, or if not, then 20, or an imaginary, whatever. But I love that one. It always does something positive there. It always gets me in a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you see it and you're like, okay, there's money. There's always money, right? There's always money. It's just like changing that in your brain. Like every time you see that and your brain says, oh yeah, I have money, I have $100, it just starts expecting you to have money and to have $100. And so then it starts flowing in all different ways.
What are, now I love you have like each day it's you speaking, we can hear you kind of chatting like taking us through this course. It's not just all reading. And I love that because you are sharing little bits about what you do and you know, like, I'm not sure I forget if the $100 thing is in there, but I know there's something similar. What are some other things we can do and switch up to change our story around money, or to start expecting it and start to feel like it's possible? I guess it's hard to, okay, here's the thing. I didn't believe it at first either. It's hard to believe that money can kind of come from nowhere.
Yeah.
But it can.
It totally can.
And it does. And so can you I know you teach people through the course, but let's do a little on having people be more open to that idea. Because a lot of times people are like, there literally is no way right now I can see. And you're like, well, then it's definitely not. You have to pretend and try. How about try? Just try it.
Try it out. Yeah. So one of my favorite things for just even opening that space is starting to look for stories. And I really should have a list on my website, but they've come up over the years where it's like somebody just finds 100 gold bars in their backyard, right? They go to do an addition and all of a sudden there's money, or right? Like there's money just shows up. Or the other day, an armored truck spilled like 100,000 pennies on a highway. Yeah. One of my clients sent me that. And so just looking for these ways that money did just show up in people's life. Like, oh yeah, they just got money that way. So really being open and paying a lot of attention to those stories. On a personal level, start celebrating every bit of money that comes into your life, you know, because of the digital stuff. A lot of times, you know, people sometimes don't even know anymore if they get paid auto pay and it just goes to their account. They don't even notice, like they don't remember it's payday a lot of the time, right?
Right.
Goes that, right? So you can just start by celebrating payday. Celebrate all the money that comes into your life. Celebrate the discounts. The other day, it was awesome. I went into a store, picked out a couple of shirts for my goddaughter, and we got to the register, and one of them was it was like $30. And I was like, I just don't want it for that. Right. And not because I can't afford it. I was just like, no, it's not what I want.
Yeah. It didn't feel worth it or whatever. Just wasn't.
Yeah, it just wasn't. And I said, go ahead and put that back. And then the lady, she says, okay, she goes, let me look up and see if it's going to get marked down tomorrow for you. And she looked it up. She goes, I don't see it, but here's what I'm going to do for you. Tell me your name. She did this all on her own. She says, put it down and then you call tomorrow and just say it's on hold and you want to know if it gets marked down. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Like she's helping me like get what I want. And so just celebrate even moments like that. Like the moment that you walk in and what you want, you know, your favorite coffee is on sale for, you know, a couple bucks off, you know, celebrate that you walked into the store on that day. That was the day you needed to buy coffee, right?
That's a good one. Cause one of the coffee brands that I really like is pretty expensive. And one day I did walk in and I was like, oh my God, score. It is like $5 off a bag. I am yeah, but that's kind of like, again, something that you wouldn't think of, but again, it's trying to gear focus and attention towards what's already there that you're getting, even if it's a little bit of deals, your favorite things off this week. All right, that's a score, right? You know, just keeping being aware of what's already there. I like it.
And keeping track. I mean, I say this in the book, Manifest 10,000, like write down all of the extra money that starts to flow into your life. And it's amazing. I mean, that's how people, there's tons of stories of people who've just read the book. They didn't even do the course. They just read the book and manifested more than $10,000. And one of the keys is always like keeping track, because it builds that momentum in your mind, right? Like the first time you're like, oh yeah, I found a quarter, came out of nowhere. You're like, But once you write down the 10th thing about like, oh yeah, somebody bought me coffee today, $5. Somebody, like, once you start to build that momentum, you're training your brain for what you wanted to see. You're training your brain to believe you can be more abundant and that money can find its way to you. And that just gets bigger and better.
Yeah. I have a friend who literally out of nowhere, someone as a gift just to be like, I want this for you, literally, and they could have afforded it themselves, but bought them a very expensive like chandelier for their home. And it was like the most random. And I was like, what? She's like, and she tried to be like, whoa, this is a very expensive gift. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just like that from a really good friend who had a lot of money and just felt that she wanted to do that for them. And they had a little bit of an issue receiving, but they ultimately did. And I mean, it's substantial. It's a substantial thing. And, but I'm not surprised because my friend did the 10K program. She's the same one who manifested the 10K, and she does that. Also, I want to say too, if you're in a partnership, particularly marriage, where things are on paper going to whoever makes what is each other's, okay, especially those. Yeah. You can totally manifest for both of you through your partner. Absolutely. Even if your partner is not law of attraction or doesn't even understand it. I have seen this happen over and over again, where the wife, who may not be the one earning the money, or depends, it could be the other, still LOAs it coming in for their work. I've really seen this a lot. Can we talk about that for a minute? Because you're not stuck just because the moneymaker in your family may not think like you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, that makes 100% sense. And I love talking about this. And there's a great story of somebody who took the course and, her husband was a spender. And so she did think like, this is never going to happen, right? He makes the majority, he spends it. How am I going to manifest? And she just really focused on what she was doing and manifested $10,000 and things are better financially. So you can, and the key really is to just own it for yourself. Own that I can do this. Don't expect them to participate. Don't even want them to participate. Be 100% fine with them not participating, but also knowing that, okay, I can manifest through them. It happens all the time, bonuses. When you take responsibility and you're like, okay, I want more money in my world, it can come through anywhere. And the universe is going to deliver the quickest place. So if the quickest place is that your husband gets an unexpected $5,000 bonus, then the universe is going to deliver the quickest and easiest way. Instead of trying to figure out, well, how can I get you 5,000? Let me just put it in your husband's paycheck. Let me just send it straight to you. Right. So I think that's important to remember too, is that the universe will deliver in the quickest and easiest way.
Tell us about, as we're sort of wrapping it up, there's a lot of ways you can work with people. It's not just money coaching, it's life, it's business, entrepreneurs. I know you love working with, helping them. Let's talk about all the various ways people can be helped by you in your work.
Yes, for sure. So I work with a few entrepreneurs. But the place I start with everybody is with this Manifest 10K, because the lessons that you learn, whether you have, I just interviewed a client of mine earlier today who she was already making 10K a month, right? But she still go through the program because it lays that foundation that it can be easier. It can, and then she got a contract that went from, like $10,000 a month to a solid 11,000, which is over $12,000 if you look at it from a year, right? And so that's where I start with everybody, because laying this foundation, knowing your money story and choosing your money story for me opens up the doors to what else you want in your life. Because if money can flow in, we can do all the other work. So I do a lot of, I also do a lot of future self work with, I do a future self workshop that's 3 days long. And it's really how I immerse you in what's 100% possible. And, so if I can remember it, somebody said, like, it takes it out of a daydream and makes it into the thing is going to happen. So it's no longer just like, oh yeah, I hope one day I have that. Maybe that'll happen.
You're like, oh, it's coming.
It's coming. It's totally coming. Yeah. Yeah. And so, the easiest way for people to work with me is just to sign up for the Enchanted Circle, which is a monthly coaching program. and we just lay the foundation. And then if, as you're an entrepreneur, if you want more time and we really want to work on bringing your future self into your business and letting your future self call the shots, then we can add on some private coaching, one-on-one coaching from there.
I love it. What would you like to leave our audience with about money? If someone's feeling, aside from, Manifest 10K, any kind of uplifting either story or words of wisdom or a quote or anything you'd like to leave us with?
My favorite thing that I say is that the story that you tell today is the life you live tomorrow. And so if you can just catch yourself, just start paying attention and ask yourself, is this the money story I want to be telling? Do I want to say I can't afford that? Or do I want to say I'm choosing not to buy that today? And the same with, I'll leave one extra, my favorite word shift is to say invest instead of spend.
I was going to bring that up because I know that's one of your things. And I like that that's one of your things is because you could be talking to someone that's, and you could say, I just don't really want to spend the money on that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say, I'm just not, or, I'm not interested in investing right now, or I'm not in a place to, how do you suggest that's worded? But either way, it's not the details. It's just the invest versus can't, so give us some nuances there so we can start.
So when we spend, we often think of like, it's over, it's gone out, it's not. But when you invest, you consciously expect a return. So whether that return is a certain amount of happiness or whether that return is more money, you are consciously expecting that money to come back. And when we look at something as an investment, when it changes your brain as like, oh, is this an investment I want to make? Is this going to give me the happiness return that I want? Or am I just spending for that quick hit high? And so it really starts to change the way that your brain thinks about both when you go to, invest money, allow money to leave and flow out, as well as what you're expecting to come back.
I love it very much. Thank you so much. We will put how to connect you in the show notes, but where do we go directly to find you? CassieParks.com, right?
Yep. CassieParks.com, CASSIE Parks.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're wonderful. And again, I hope everyone looks up the work of Cassie because it's affected my life. She's a wonderful person and also really just changing a ton of people's money stories and making it better, which is what we all want. So thanks again for joining us, everyone.